The invasion begins. The Alani's wrath. The Alani had slaughtered trillions across the galaxy until humanity got the message and rolled up their sleeves in preparation for kicking some serious alien ass. The burnt-out husk of Zyria spun silently beneath the harbinger of doom. Commander Xander's eyes glowed as he surveyed the destruction, his clawed reptilian feet tapping on the metal deck of the warship's bridge. This conquest had been too easy. The Zyrian cities were piles of rubble, their dead strewn everywhere, broken and bloodied. This planet's primitive defenses had crumbled instantly to the Alani's advanced weaponry and battle tactics. A call for help. Light years away, distress calls reached a small space station orbiting Earth. Ethan Gordon, a hardened Earth Defense Force soldier, balled his fists as he listened to the cries for help. Voice after voice, planet after planet, begging for aid before being snuffed out by the Alani. He turned to a holo display showing Earth's arsenal of ships, soldiers, and destructive weaponry. It was an impressive force. Humanity had a long history of winning against impossible odds, but this would be their greatest test yet. Rallying the troops. "This is it," Ethan said to his assembled troops, his voice hard as steel. "The Alani think they're invincible, but they haven't faced us yet. It's time to show them what humans can do." He knew what was at stake. If the Alani reached Earth, it would mean the end of humanity, the end of everything. Ethan would throw every last resource Earth had at the Alani. This was a fight they could not afford to lose. He would lead them to victory or die trying. The plan unfolds. The new ally. Ethan gripped the edge of the holo table, knuckles pale, as he tried to focus on preparations for the coming battle. Despite the urgency of his tasks, he was interrupted by an insistent blaring from the communications console. A crewman rushed over and gasped. Ethan's brow furrowed. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded curtly. "Scan it thoroughly. If it checks out, let it board." Minutes later, Ethan stood in the shuttle bay as the battered vessel's hatch hissed open. The lone figure stumbled out, its blue skin marred with burns and its clothing in tatters. The alien raised its webbed hands in a gesture of peace. "Please, I am Orcs. My world is gone, destroyed by the Alani. I have information vital to your war effort." Orcs' black eyes were haunted. "I know the Alani's next target. They plan to attack the Korek system. Critical mission." Ethan tensed. "They'll be nearly impossible to stop." He turned to his crew. "Get this man to the infirmary. I want a full debrief as soon as he's stable." Hours later, Ethan leaned over a star chart, Orcs' warnings echoing in his ears. The Korek's defenses were impressive, but they couldn't withstand a full Alani assault. Ethan traced his finger over the map, his jaw set. They had to intercept the Alani at Korek. It was the only way. The strike team. He activated the ship-wide comm. "This is Commander Gordon. I need volunteers for a critical mission. We're going to hit the Alani where it hurts, board the harbinger of doom itself, and knock out its weapons before they reach Korek." Ethan's eyes glinted with cold fire. "I won't lie to you. This will be the most dangerous mission of our lives. But if we succeed, we buy time for our fleet to engage. We can turn the tide of this war. Who's with me?" A resounding cheer echoed through the ship. Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. He had his team. The battle commences. Boarding the harbinger. As the shadows edge, the EDF's most advanced stealth frigate glided silently through space towards its fateful rendezvous. Ethan stood before his assembled strike team in the armory. They checked their weapons with practiced efficiency, the soft clicks and clacks filling the air. Ethan met each of their gazes. "You all know what's at stake. The fate of Korek, of the whole damn galaxy, rests on our shoulders. We cannot fail." He slid on his helmet, the HUD flickering to life. "Lock and load. People, it's time to show these Alani bastards what happens when you mess with humanity." Silent approach. The shadow's edge drifted ever closer to the looming silhouette of the harbinger of doom. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. This was it, the point of no return. In the suffocating silence of the stealth ship, he whispered a final prayer, then stepped forward to meet his destiny. The ship shuddered as it connected with the alien warship's exterior, magnetic clamps locking into place. "Seal check," Ethan ordered over the comm, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Infiltration. One by one, his team confirmed the integrity of their suits. Weapons at the ready, they filed into the boarding tube. The tube hissed as it pressurized. Then the far hatch slid open, revealing the dim, oppressive corridors of the Alani vessel. Ethan signaled his team forward, their boots clanging softly on the metal grating. They crept through the ship, guided by the stolen schematics Orcs had provided. Ethan's finger rested on his rifle's trigger as they approached the main weapon control room. The clash of titans. Ambush. Ethan halted, fist raised as voices drifted from ahead, guttural and alien. He motioned to his team. They took up positions on either side of the door, muscles coiled, ready to strike. On Ethan's signal, they burst into the room, rifles blazing. The Alani guards inside fell before they could even draw their weapons, green blood splattering the consoles. "Fan out. Secure the room," Ethan barked, scanning for threats. His team moved with practiced efficiency, checking corners and dragging the Alani bodies out of the way. "All right, let's get to work on these weapon systems." "Move." The alarm. But as they began interfacing with the alien controls, a piercing alarm split the air, red light pulsing through the room. Ethan cursed under his breath. They tripped a security protocol. "Hold them off. Buy me time." Ethan yelled, fingers flying over the console as he tried to disable the ship's primary weapons. Plasma fire began to streak into the room, sizzling against the metal walls. Ethan's team returned fire from cover, the air thick with the acrid scent of ozone. Wave after wave of Alani warriors poured into the corridor, heedless of their losses. For each one that fell, two more seemed to take their place. The showdown. Ethan gritted his teeth as he worked, the cries of the wounded and dying ringing in his ears. Just as he was about to input the final command, a towering figure pushed through the mass of Alani soldiers. Ethan's blood ran cold. It was Skander, the Alani commander himself, eyes blazing with fury. "You dare to strike at the heart of my ship." Skander roared, his voice like gravel. He leveled his plasma rifle at Ethan. "I will take great pleasure in ending you, human filth, against all odds." The fight for survival. But Ethan was already moving, diving behind a console as Skander's shot scorched the air where he'd been standing. He came up firing, the rounds from his rifle pinging off Skander's armor. The Alani commander laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Your puny weapons are no match for us. You only delay the inevitable. Soon, your worlds will burn, your people will be enslaved, and the Alani will reign supreme." Human defiance. Ethan rose to his feet, squaring his shoulders. "You underestimate us, Skander. Humanity doesn't break. We don't surrender. We fight no matter the odds, and we will fight you to our last breath." With a roar, Ethan charged forward, firing as he went. Skander met him head-on, and they clashed in a brutal melee, armored fists and rifle butts striking flesh and bone. They traded blows across the room, evenly matched in skill and ferocity. Ethan ducked under a sweeping strike and drove his fist into Skander's midsection. The Alani commander grunted but didn't fall. Skander's retaliatory kicks sent Ethan flying, his rifle clattering away. A final stand. Skander loomed over him, bleeding from a dozen wounds but still standing. "Any last words, human?" Ethan spat blood, a savage grin on his lips. "Just two," Ethan snarled, eyes blazing with defiance. Human resilience. With a final desperate lunge, he tackled Skander, bearing him to the ground. They grappled, straining against each other's strength, until Ethan managed to wrap his arm around Skander's throat. He squeezed with every ounce of power he had left, teeth bared in a silent snarl. Xander thrashed and clawed at him, but Ethan held on, spots dancing in his vision. Finally, with a shuddering gasp, the Alani commander went limp. Ethan released his hold, panting, and staggered to his feet. Weapons disabled. "Commander, the weapons are down." Mina's shout cut through the haze of pain and exhaustion. Ethan looked up to see the view screens filled with the flashes of human ships dropping out of warp, missiles, and laser fire streaking toward the harbinger of doom. "Fall back to the shadow's edge. Now," Ethan ordered, scooping up his rifle. His team disengaged from the Alani forces, fighting a running battle back to their boarding tube. Plasma bolts sizzled past Ethan's helmet as he covered their retreat, the last to step into the airlock as the shadow's edge detached from the crippled Alani warship. Retreat and regroup. Ethan allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. They had struck a blow against the invaders, shown them that humanity would not go quietly into the night. But the battle was far from over. As the shadow's edge streaked away from the harbinger of doom, Ethan watched the human fleet surging forward to engage the Alani forces. Turning the tide. Human fleet strikes back. As the human fleet closed in, ships clashed in a dazzling exchange of fire. Missiles and energy beams crisscrossed the void. The human vessels, outfitted with cutting-edge targeting systems and powerful armaments, held their own against the formidable Alani warships. Ethan docked with his flagship, the Resolute, and raced to the bridge. He took command, barking orders as he coordinated the human counterattack. Target their critical systems, engines, weapons, shields. Hit them with everything we've got. Intelligence wins battles. The fleet responded with deadly precision, exploiting the weaknesses laid bare by the intelligence gleaned from the harbinger of doom. Alani ships buckled and burst under the onslaught, their hulls rent by explosions. The once invincible alien armada began to crumble. But the Alani had one last card to play. A monstrous construct detached from their fleet, a planet killer bristling with world-shattering weaponry. Its power core thrummed with an ominous glow as it began to charge, the energy readings spiking to terrifying heights. A desperate plan. "Sir," a sensor officer cried, "that thing's going critical. If it fires, it'll wipe out half the system." Ethan finished grimly, "including us and the Korik." He stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. There was only one way to stop this. A cold certainty settled over him. He opened a comm channel to the fleet. "This is Commander Gordon. I need volunteers for a one-way trip. We're going to take out that super weapon from the inside." His second-in-command, Lena Hartman, caught his eye as he turned to board the captured Alani shuttle that would be their infiltration craft and their tomb. "Ethan," her voice was tight with emotion, "I should be going with you." He gripped her shoulder. "I need you here, Lena. The fleet is yours now." His gaze bored into hers. "Give 'em hell for me." She nodded, jaw clenched, and stepped back. Ethan marched into the shuttle, his team falling in behind him. As the hatch sealed and the craft lifted off, he closed his eyes for a moment, steeling himself. This was it, the 0 hour, the endgame, the final showdown. Infiltrating the superweapon, the shuttle knifed through the chaos of the battle, zeroing in on the looming shape of the Alani superweapon. Its outer defenses were formidable, batteries of cannons and dense thickets of point defense turrets. The shuttle juked and jinked, narrowly evading streams of plasma fire that stitched the void around them. They hurtled into an open hangar bay, the shuttle skidding and sparking across the deck. The hatch blew, and Ethan's team poured out, weapons spitting death. Securing the core, Alani soldiers fell before their ruthless advance, the deck growing slick with blood. Ethan led them deeper into the bowels of the weapon, following the schematic they'd stolen. Every second counted now, the power readings climbing fast. At last, they'd reached the central core, a seething maelstrom of exotic energies. Ethan and his team set to work, planting demolition charges at critical junctures. Sweat streaked their faces in the searing heat. Alarms shrieked, and more Alani forces flooded in, plasma bolts stitching the air. Holding the line. Hold them off. Ethan roared to his team, fingers flying over the detonator keypad. A desperate firefight erupted. Ethan's warriors fighting with the ferocity of the doomed. One by one, they fell, buying him precious seconds. He armed the last charge and whirled, his rifle bucking in his hands as an Alani bore down on him, its eyes glinting with hate, weapon blazing. Ethan felt the searing kiss of plasma across his ribs. He didn't stop firing until the alien crumpled, smoke curling from its shattered armor. Escape and victory. Clear. Ethan bellowed, his voice hoarse. The survivors of his team disengage, fighting a brutal rear-guard action as they fell back to the shuttle. Ethan was the last aboard, his armor scorched and dented, his body battered but unbowed. As the shuttle blasted free of the superweapon, Ethan keyed the detonator. A series of massive explosions ripped through the Alani construct, tearing it apart from within. It detonated in a blinding flash, the shockwave buffeting the shuttle and sending it tumbling. In the ensuing silence, Ethan dragged himself to the cockpit viewport. Beyond, the remnants of the Alani fleet were in full retreat, fleeing before the victorious human onslaught. A fierce grin split Ethan's blood-streaked face. They had done it. The Alani were broken, their doomsday weapon destroyed. The galaxy would live to see another dawn. But the cost had been high. As the shuttle limped back toward the Resolute, Ethan bowed his head, thinking of the brave souls who had given their lives to make this victory possible. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten. The war was not yet won. He knew the Alani would return, thirsting for vengeance. But humanity would be ready. They would fight to the last to defend their homes and their freedom. And leading the charge would be Ethan Gordon, the man who had stared down annihilation and sent it fleeing, the man who had shown the galaxy the indomitable spirit of humanity.